the shutdown, because that's what's causing, I would say, part of the jitteriness in the market. Originally, I was against it because, it's a fucking distraction, or it's an outright sign of the exact government dysfunction that's scaring off the markets. But I'm actually starting to change my mind, because when you actually look into it, the craziest part of this thing is Schumer, dude. Chuck Schumer's keeping 800,000 workers from getting paid. Military families not getting their checks, or at least getting their checks delayed. And then you have a mysterious billionaire, I'll go with Musk, most likely, who stepped in to make sure that they're still getting paid on time. And that was to the tune, if this number is correct, $10 billion a month. So, and the Dems timed this whole thing to line up with some protest. I believe it's tomorrow, the No Kings protest, or No Kings March, whatever the fuck. It's essentially so they can have like a maximum theater for all the shenanigans they're doing, with all these paid, what would you call them, activists that hit the streets. Yeah. So that's not governing. That's a clown show. Anyways, we're on, so it says the 17th today. Now it makes it 17 days of the shutdown. And based on what I found, essentially the Democrats won't pass the clean funding bill, or any clean funding bill, because they want $200 billion to restore healthcare benefits to DACA recipients. I'm not even joking. We're talking asylum seekers, people with temporary protected status. These aren't citizens, you guys. These are just people who are here illegally or in some gray area status. So the House did pass a clean CR on September 19th. There's just 24 pages, basic funding through November, no attachments, the same kind of shit Democrats supported 13 times prior. And Senate rejected it 8 times. 8 fucking times. Because they want their money for illegals. And apparently, right, they're deliberately dragging this out until the No Kings March thing happens, which is massive anti-Trump protest organized by Indivisible and the usual progressive shitheads. So, when millions of these brain-dead activists hit the streets, they can point, at the shutdown and scream about fascism, while it's actually the Democrats refusing to fund anything. So, or I should say, refusing to fund anything until they get healthcare money for people that shouldn't even be here. It's a joke. And, Trump cut these benefits earlier this year with a big, beautiful bill. So he saved about, I think the number was quoted, $175 billion, by saying that if you're not American, you don't get taxpayer funded healthcare, which makes perfect sense, But Democrats are saying that that's cruel, that we need to restore it all, and they're willing to shut down the entire government to get it. Okay, great, dude. And polling so far has it like 65% of Americans are blaming Democrats. So it's not, optically, it's not good. And those numbers are climbing every day because, what people see is the government shut down, the workers are suffering, the military is stressed, all because Democrats are holding everything hostage for illegals. So, backfiring, we'll say that. And here's where it gets interesting, because Trump's not panicking like Republicans usually do. He's using the shutdown permanently to shrink the federal government. So the day after it started, he announced, I think, over 4,000, something like that, permanent layoffs across a bunch of departments. And these aren't furloughs. They're permanent termination. So they're called reduction in force. So that means they're not coming back. This isn't like once government reopens, you get your job back. It's a wrap. So DEI initiatives, they got slashed. EPA climate grants are cut. Bloated special education programs, all that shit eliminated. And if this continues, the projections are 750,000 projections of furloughed people. That's crazy. Tens of thousands were permanently fired. So past shutdowns, the people got to go home, essentially, come back later with back pay. It's basically a paid vacation for them. This time, Trump's firing them. So the positions are eliminated. They're not coming back, right? This is such a fucking steal for Republicans. I don't understand how Democrats could have gotten cornered like this. It's insane. Well, apparently, they went into this thinking that they would be pretty much like every other shutdown. So Republicans would panic after a week or two because of the political pressure. They'd cut a deal, give Democrats what they wanted, right? and then the government reopens. Everybody just goes home. Done, right? But that's not what's happening now. So instead of Trump using the shutdown to do what he's wanted to do since day one, essentially, he's gonna actually get to massively shrink the federal government. That's so cool. And all it takes is the government being shut down. So every day this shit is continuing, guys. He's identifying more programs. They got a whole like list of shit that they're trying to cut. So more people to fire, more money to save, right? And the longer this goes, the more permanent these changes are. Permanent. There's no walking this shit back. He's making Democrats defend spending hundreds of billions on healthcare for illegal American workers without paychecks. That's crazy. Optically, it cannot get any worse than this. So the Democrats' leverage is disappearing like right before their eyes. Originally, they could look at all these people suffering. You could look at all the services disrupted, right? But Trump's saying, oh, that's cool, dude. Fine. We'll stay shut. We'll cut costs. And by the way, most Americans think you're causing this because you're demanding money for people who shouldn't even be here. And you're timing it to your fucking protest. Good luck with that one. So who has the leverage here when you think about this? And look, this connects to a bigger pattern with Democrats, by the way. They always hold essential services hostage for pet projects. So it's never about what Americans need. It's always about expanding benefits to non-Americans, funding the fucking woke garbage, protecting illegal immigration, all of that shit. Remember Trump's first term? They shut the government down trying to get DACA protection. They had the same playbook. Hold paychecks hostage, blame Republicans, demand amnesty. I mean, the media runs fucking cover every time. The propaganda merchants at CNN were crying about workers while burying that Democrats were refusing to, to match the clean funding that Republicans wanted. Like that, I don't know how they think they can get away with this. Nobody watches CNN anymore. The mind control is just it's not as effective as it used to be. And the media coverage, if we're talking about the media coverage, it's such a joke, dude. They act like these shutdowns are unprecedented crisis on America. You know, every time Republicans are in charge, this is what happens. But when Republicans did it with Obama in 2013 over Obamacare, the same outlets were literally praising him on standing firm on principles. Do you guys remember that shit? When the Democrats were holding out, it's brave leadership. When it's Republicans, it's like hostage taking terrorism. The double standard so blatant, it's almost funny. Except it's not funny because millions of people actually believe this shit. That's the problem here. Anyways, this time it's actually backfiring on them because Trump's not fucking folding this time. So Social Security, Medicare, military pay, technically protected, even with the delays because, okay, then you have, what else could you name actually in this? Border security, air traffic control, stuff that people actually care about. They figured out a way to keep that funded. What's getting cut is garbage that nobody needs and nobody asks for. Climate grants at the EPA, fuck off. I mean, these are like liberal pet projects that most Americans, seriously, they don't give a shit about. DI programs, everybody's sick of that woke bullshit. Federal fucking parasites who spend their days pushing progressive policies instead of doing actual work. Get them out of here. The base is loving this. Okay? Winning. This is they literally say what we voted for. They're winning. And conservative media is framing Trump as like promises made, promises kept. So permanently closing Democrat programs. Check. And then you had Speaker Johnson. He said 2 days ago or 3 days ago that this could exceed 35 days. Right? I think 2019 was about that. So this would make it the longest shutdown potentially if they're going to stall like this. So every day Dems refuse to pass a clean bill, they're admitting they care more about illegal migrants. That's how this is getting sold. They're so screwed on this one. Big mistake. Chuck Schumer he walked into a minefield. But here's what pisses me off about the timing of this stupid march, right? When you really dig into it, Schumer is scared shitless of his own base. If he caves before the 18th, AOC and the radicals will fucking crucify his ass, right? They'll say he capitulated and they'll threaten to primary him. So he's keeping government shut to appease activists for the fucking march, right? And the workers in the government are the ones that are paying the price for his political calculations. That's crazy, you guys. You can never appease the radicals. It's the snake eating its own tail. And Schumer knows the shutdown kills them in polling, but he's more afraid of the base than the voters. So he doubles down on this insane demand for illegal immigrant healthcare while Trump systematically dismantles the administrative state. Fucking hell, what an L you just took there. And what are the Democrats actually demanding? Well, when you look at Schumer's bill, it repeals the big, beautiful bill cuts, and it restores full eligibility for these groups to get subsidized healthcare through Obamacare and Medicaid. So official cost is around $200 billion over 10 years, but conservatives are pointing out that these are all loopholes and they're funneling way more money. You have emergency Medicaid costs, that's like $7 billion a year. And a lot of that goes to undocumented, and they just show up at hospitals. So, they have state programs that extend beyond the federal minimums, indirect cost that makes the subsidies available to people in questionable immigration status, which incentivizes more illegal immigration, by the way, because if you're telling people that you can get here and claim asylum, you get free healthcare, what do you think that means? I mean, why wouldn't millions of people come here? Think about that. So the fact-checking grifters at PolitiFact, NPR, AP, all that shit, they rate the Republican claims about funding illegals as false, right? We've probably seen this on CNN or whatever, too. They say that undocumented remain ineligible. This is just legal migrants and protected categories. That's complete bullshit, though. DACA recipients are here illegally. They're just protected from deportation, for example. Asylum seekers that are claiming asylum, but most of them don't actually qualify when their cases get heard. And then you have TPS holders on temporary status, right? That's extended forever in perpetuity, practically. So calling these legal immigrants is word games. They're hiding funding, right? Think about that. For people who shouldn't be here, no less. Okay. So when protesters hit the streets tomorrow in their stupid march, screaming about Trump being a king and an autocrat and all this shit, what's the Republican response going to be? It's your Democratic leaders keeping the government shut. They're the ones refusing a clean funding bill 8 times, and they're using you guys on the streets as props while the workers are suffering. The message lands because polling fucking says it does. The protest might actually backfire on them. I mean, instead of pressure on Republicans, it highlights Democratic obstruction. Think about that. It'll show that millions are demanding things that most Americans don't support. Insane. And it gives Trump perfect foil. This is who we're fighting. People who put illegals ahead of citizens. The messaging couldn't be more perfect right now. So the CBO estimates that apparently with the shutdown, we could be losing something like $15 billion worth of GDP per week. You got upwards of 800,000 people, like I said, that may not get paid. The military is stressed, but their checks are still coming through, probably because of Musk. FAA furloughing, 11,000 could cause flight delays. The parks will get closed. Research will stall. That's all true and shit. But long term, if this goes past the 35 days, way past the March, then people start to realize that the government functions without these programs and employees. Think about that for a second. If the EPA is operating at like 10% and nothing catastrophic happens, maybe we didn't need that spending in the first place. If education runs on a skeleton crew and schools aren't collapsing, maybe a lot of these federal employees are doing useless shit. Ever thought about that? And the spending reforms that Trump's pushing could save up to $175 billion, if not more, if they implement it fully. These aren't furloughs costing any back pay whatsoever. I have to remind you that. So, dude, we have a $2.5 trillion deficit. That's real. And I'm one of the ones who cares about balancing the budget. I mean, all of us are. Because we have to stop this insane spending or the country's going bankrupt, dude. The dollar lost 10% of its value since the start of the year. Our wallets are getting raped. That's not a joke. Now, What happens if this goes past the March, for example? What if this is past 35 days? Well, the permanent cuts that Trump's making become institutionalized. You can't just bring back 75% of the EPA climate staff if they've been officially terminated and the positions got eliminated. You'd have to recreate those positions, which requires legislation. I mean, good luck getting that shit through a Republican House. It's just not going to happen. And another thing that happens, the political narrative shifts from crisis to new normal. People have like a goldfish memory. Right now, there's headlines every day that people are focused on reading this shit. Democrats can point to disruption in the government and say, this chaos is Trump. He's an autocrat. That's why we're marching. But if it goes on longer and essential services are still running, well, people just start, forget, they adapt. The panic starts to fade. It becomes clear maybe we had more government than we fucking needed. So the march becomes a footnote. And then the latest shit happening in the mainstream media is just going to take away from the messaging. Plus, you have Trump completely reshaping the federal bureaucracy. He's not just cutting the positions. Remember that. He's firing hostile people to his agenda. So you're eliminating all these programs that work against America First priorities, the climate grants, the DEI training, all of that shit. If he has enough time with no congressional oversight, that's key, because of the shutdown, then the federal government that he's going to hand off to Trump, to Vance potentially, would look completely different than what he inherited. That's exciting to think about, actually. And there's precedent, like I said, for this working, because in 2018, 2019, the government already shut down for 35 days, and Republicans didn't suffer for it. Trump's approval rating actually went up because the base saw him fighting for something. And he was standing up to Democrat obstructionism, right? And when he ended it, he declared a national emergency and he got his funding anyway. So he won the battle. This time, he has even more leverage because he's not asking for new funding. He's just refusing to negotiate over Democratic add-ons for illegals, no less, that are also timing it for their protest. His position is clean. The optics look great. And using the shutdown to accomplish policy goals that his base is actually expecting. Chef's kiss on this one, right? Democrats come out looking like ass completely. There are risks, of course, if this shit goes on too long, right? And long enough that Social Security checks get delayed, if Medicare payments, stop, if our mysterious billionaire donor doesn't want to put any more cash for the military, right? You get multiple missing paychecks back to back to back weeks. Maybe the equation then would change really quick. And then everybody turns on the government. But so far, the administration has been super careful about protecting those politically sensitive areas. So kudos to them. You give credit where credit is due. So as long as they do that, the position holds for the Republicans, I would say. The economic damage, though, that's real. Look, 15 billion per week in lost GDP, that shit adds up too. Okay. You probably delays infrastructure projects. You got reduced consumer spending from the unpaid workers. Market volatility, we were just talking about at the beginning of the stream. The stock market's probably going to take a shit on Monday. Crypto is taking a shit currently. I mean, for you guys, for me, it's 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the afternoon, but for you guys, you're probably watching a shitty market right now, and it'll continue probably into the weekend. So I think I saw crypto dropped 2% just today alone. We have a problem if the credit agency gives us downgraded ratings, right? S&P and Fitch. That's something to look out for. They already said that they're looking closely at this. But yeah, Republicans betting the long-term fiscal reforms will actually come out ahead, and there'll be political wins for this. And then that should outweigh the short-term pain. I guess the voters seem to agree so far. It hasn't really damaged people on that personal level just yet. Unless, like I said, they might go much further. We might see some problems. So still fascinating watching the left-wing media. Right, Boomerville, CNN, and MSNBC, they're running constant stories about, suffering federal workers and families going to food banks and kids are losing childcare because parents aren't getting paid. All that shit is designed to make Trump look fucking cruel and build momentum for the No Kings March. Get people angry. And this shit's not working. Not at all. Now, most Americans look at this and they see the Democrats refusing to pass a clean funding bill because they want to fund illegals. Huh. And they're desperately timing it to their protest to extract maximal political theater. So either Democrats crack before or after the march, or this becomes the longest shutdown and Trump restructures the government. Cool story. Nice. Either way, Republicans win because Dems overplay their hand. They're demanding money for illegals. Like, this is literally probably the worst messaging you could ever have. I mean, they're stuck defending that position while Americans are already starting to blame them. So, cool. Trump is eliminating positions permanently, what people don't need and don't want. And if he pulls this off and uses the shutdown to cut thousands of positions and save hundreds of billions, right, changes the game for every future budget fight completely. Democrats can't threaten shutdowns anymore because Republicans just say, fine, dude, we'll shut it and we're going to cut even more waste. This can't be a tool. The leverage disappears. That's probably why the GOP, the establishment GOP, is nervous too. They also like shutdowns as a scary thing, forcing compromise. So Trump's side of the Republicans will ride this out and shrink the government. Cool. They're happy with it. So now there's suddenly no reason to ever negotiate with Democrats on spending. Anyways, that's I would say that's a fundamental shift on how DC works. This only happens if Trump doesn't blink. And, every month, if this goes on for multiple months, it'll be interesting to see. But, I would imagine that Democrats would then be put in an impossible situation, which they could not crawl back from when those paychecks stop for a lot of people, especially seeing that Trump's doing everything he can to get people paid. So it's a bold strategy, Cotton. We'll see if it pays off.